It started as a joke, the kind of joke middle schoolers make in hallways between bells. The kind that's whispered behind binders and passed between smirks. The kind that's meant to sting, not enough to bleed, just enough to remind you, you don't belong. He didn't even hear it the first time. Liam was too busy digging through the lost and found for a hoodie that didn't smell like old fries. Too busy trying not to be seen, because being seen always came with a price. So when someone said, you should totally sign up for the talent show, he thought they were talking to someone else. They weren't. By lunchtime, the sign-up sheet had his name, in shaky, blocky handwriting, not his. Someone else wrote it, someone laughing, and by 7th period, the whole school knew. Liam, the quiet foster kid who sat near the radiator and smelled like second-hand books, was going to perform. Liam had learned a long time ago how to take up less space, how to fold into corners, how to walk without squeaking the soles of his shoes, how to speak only when absolutely necessary, and even then, only in short, neutral words like, okay, and yeah. He had lived in 5 different houses since he was 9. Each one had its own rules. No food after 9. Don't touch the thermostat. Quiet hours start at 7. Don't slam doors. Don't talk back, don't ask questions. He didn't remember his mother's face, just the way she used to hum when doing dishes. Off-key, soft, like she was singing. To herself more than to anyone else. The latest home was better than most. Miss Andrea wasn't cruel. She worked nights at the hospital and left sticky notes on the fridge that said things like, dinner in the microwave and, you matter even when it's quiet. But Liam didn't trust comfort. Comfort moved. Comfort vanished. So he stayed, quiet. At school, he was the kind of kid people forgot they already passed in the hallway. Not because he was invisible, but because he wasn't interesting enough to remember. His clothes were always one size off. His backpack had someone else's, name stitched in fading letters. And when teachers handed out partner work, he always ended up alone, or paired with whoever hadn't looked away fast enough. But the thing about people who go unnoticed is that they notice everything. Liam noticed how people laughed too loudly when they were scared. He noticed how some kids only looked at mirrors when no one was watching. He noticed how the janitor tapped his fingers in rhythm when pushing his cart past the science wing. And at night, in the room at the end of the hallway that smelled faintly of old paint and sleep, he'd mimic the patterns with his feet. On the floor, on the rug, on the air, not dancing. Just remembering, because once, before everything changed, before group homes and lockers and name tags on toothbrushes, Liam had a pair of shoes. Not just any shoes. Black leather, slick soles, metal taps underneath. His mom had bought them at a thrift store. Too big at the time, but she said, you'll grow into them, baby. And when you do, the world's gonna hear you. He kept them in a shoebox, taped shut, buried in the back of his closet behind forgotten folders and a dented lunchbox. He hadn't opened it in years until the dare. It happened in the middle of 3rd period, math class. The clock ticked louder than the teacher. Someone passed a folded note across the room. Not to Liam, of course, but to Caleb, who sat 2 rows over and lived for chaos. Caleb smirked as he opened the paper, then turned in his seat and looked right at Liam. Hey, tap shoes, he whispered just loud enough. Liam blinked. Didn't answer? Caleb leaned farther over his desk, voice now a snake wrapped in a joke. Talent show's coming. You in or you scared? Liam said nothing. He was always quiet, but this silence was different. It tasted like heat behind the ears. Like every set of eyes in the room had shifted 1 degree toward him. Someone chuckled near the windows. Bet he doesn't even have a talent. Another voice chimed in. Then came the words, the ones meant to brand, not bruise. Come on, it's just a dare. That was the thing. It wasn't really an invitation, it was a trap, a setup. Say yes, and they'd laugh. Say no, and they'd laugh harder. There was no right answer, only the kind that keeps you small. Liam didn't respond, not then. But at lunch, the sign-up list was passed around. A wrinkled sheet of paper taped to the wall near the vending machine. Caleb made sure everyone saw him write Liam's name. He held up the pen like a torch. "Look who's gonna perform," he announced, grin wide. Liam didn't even look up from his tray. He poked at a slice of apple, pretended not to hear. But later that day, when the hallway was empty and no one was watching, he walked over to the list, paused, and added one thing beneath his name: solo. That night, Liam stood in front of his closet. The box was still there, taped shut, dusty. He stared at it for a long time, then slowly, quietly, he pulled it out, tore the tape away. Inside, a pair of black leather tap shoes, still too big, still waiting. He sat on the floor and slipped them on. They fit, not perfectly, but enough. He stood, tapped once. The sound was sharper than he remembered. More real, more him. Miss Andrea knocked gently on the door. "You okay, sweetie?" He turned quickly, heart leaping into his throat. "Just stretching," he said. It was the most he'd said all day. She didn't push, didn't ask, just smiled and nodded. "Well," she said, "whatever you're doing in there, it sounds like footsteps." She walked away. He looked down at the shoes, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like running from the sound. He wanted to chase it. The rumors didn't take long. By the next morning, everyone had heard. Liam was actually going through with it. The quiet foster kid, the one with holes in his backpack and hand-me-down sneakers, the one who barely talked, was going to perform. Alone. They didn't ask what he was doing, they didn't care. They just filled in the blanks with laughter. "I heard he's gonna rap about foster care." "No way. He's probably gonna cry on stage and call it performance art. Maybe he'll just stand there and vanish like a magic trick." Caleb made a flyer, a real one this time, printed in color on the library computer. "Don't miss Liam's one-man meltdown." Underneath, a picture of a toilet and a spotlight. He taped it to the bathroom door, the vending machine, and Liam's locker. Liam tore them down, one by one, didn't say a word. But that night, he pushed his desk to the side of the room, rolled out the thin rug that Miss Andrea had bought from a thrift store, and stood in the center with his shoes on. He didn't look in the mirror, didn't record himself, didn't count steps or time beats. He just listened to the floor, to the silence, to the rhythm already in his body. Tap, 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 heel, slide, pause, tap again. At first, he was clumsy. He forgot what went where. His timing collapsed. He slipped once and landed hard on the rug, elbow scraping against the corner of the dresser. He didn't cry, didn't curse, just sat there listening to his heartbeat in his ears, faster than the rhythm he'd been chasing. He closed his eyes, remembered his mom, the way she used to clap along offbeat, how her laughter always came after the mistake, not before. He stood back up and started again. He practiced every night when the house was quiet, when Miss Andrea was sleeping, when the world stopped asking him questions. He practiced with socks, shoved into the toes to make the shoes fit better. He practiced on cardboard, on tile, on imagination. And every night, he got a little quieter in school and a little louder on the floor. By the end of the week, he didn't need music. The rhythm was already in him, buried under layers of silence waiting to break the surface. At lunch, when someone snuck behind him and tapped his tray to the floor, he didn't flinch. He picked it up, walked to another table and tapped his foot, once, quietly, but it echoed in his chest for hours. He didn't rehearse for revenge, he didn't plan to show them, he just wanted to feel real. Even for 3 minutes on a stage built for kids louder than him. It rained that morning, not hard, just steady, like the sky was breathing deep and slow. Liam woke up before the alarm, before the sun, before the fear had a chance to stretch. He lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling where a crack zigzagged, like a map he hadn't figured out yet. His tap shoes sat by the door, clean, polished with an old t-shirt. The laces tied neatly. They looked like they belonged to someone else. At school, the energy buzzed like static. Posters hung in every hallway. Talent show tonight at 6 p.m. Students passed by in costumes and makeup. Drama club kids practiced, lines under their breath. Choir girls harmonized near the lockers, their voices weaving like thread through the noise. Liam kept his head down. The whispers were louder today. Some kids laughed, others didn't say anything, but their eyes did, the same way a crowd watches a car turn too fast, waiting for the crash. In fourth period, a teacher handed him a permission slip. He'd need it signed to perform. He stuffed it in his pocket. In fifth, Caleb passed him a folded note. Break a leg, Tappy. Drawn underneath was a broken stick figure, legs bent backwards. Liam didn't read it twice. By lunchtime, he couldn't eat. His stomach was full of static. He sipped water, tapped his fingers on the table, counted the beats of his own breath. Miss Andrea picked him up after school. She drove without music, glancing at him every few blocks. "You nervous?" she asked. He shrugged. She smiled. The soft kind, the don't worry kind. "I brought your old denim jacket, the one with the elbow patch. You looked sharp in that." He didn't say anything, but the corner of his mouth moved. A little at home, he dressed in silence. Black jeans, plain tee, the jacket. He laced up his shoes slowly, like a ritual. And then, he sat for 10 full minutes. Just breathing, not rehearsing, not checking the time. Just being still, like quiet before the very first note. They arrived at school early. The gym was already being transformed. Folding chairs set up in neat rows. Cables snaking across the floor. A microphone stand center stage, slightly tilted. Backstage, the other performers buzzed like bees. Liam stood in the far corner with his backpack between his feet. No one spoke. To him, no one told him where to go, so he stayed quiet. He liked it that way. His name was last on the list. Not because of talent, just because of the alphabet. But somehow it felt right, like the end of something or the beginning. When the curtain closed before the first act, Liam closed his eyes. He could hear everything. The buzz of the lights, the shuffle of papers, the crackle of anticipation, and somewhere beneath it all, his own heartbeat, like a distant drum calling him forward. His name was called, not loudly, not dramatically, just spoken. Next up, Liam Walker. The MC didn't add what he was doing, didn't know what to say, just read the name and stepped back, confused. There was a pause, longer than it should have, but Liam didn't move right away. Backstage, he stood still, hands gripping the strap of his backpack like it might hold him in place. Someone behind him whispered, "He really showed up?" Someone else chuckled, "This is gonna be painful." But Liam had long since stopped hearing what didn't matter. He stepped forward, out from behind the curtain, into the light. The gym looked different from up here, wider, shinier, colder, rows and rows of faces, some bored, some curious, most holding phones, already recording, already judging. The spotlight was too bright. It cast a white halo on the floor, leaving everything else in the dark. Liam walked slowly to the center, his footsteps muffled by the scuffed wooden stage. No music, no props, no mic. Just him, and the weight of every eye in the room. He stopped, took off his backpack, set it down gently, and knelt beside it. For a moment, people fidgeted. Someone coughed. A bag of chips crinkled in the third row. A girl in the front yawned and looked at her friend. Then, he pulled out the shoes. Black leather, taps glinting slightly under the light. He sat on the edge of the stage, removed his sneakers one by one, and slipped the tap shoes on. Tied the laces tight, double knotted, still silent. The crowd started to murmur. Is this part of it? Is he changing on stage? Is this performance art or something? Someone laughed. But it didn't last. Because when Liam stood, something shifted. He looked straight ahead, not at anyone in particular, just above the crowd. Like he was seeing something none of them could. He raised his right foot, paused, then tapped. Just once. Sharp, clean, precise. It echoed across the gym like a crack of thunder in a quiet field. Then again. Right foot. Left foot. Rhythm. Not fast. Not flashy, just real. The room went still, the laughter stopped. The rappers stilled. The phones kept recording. But now, no one was smiling. Because Liam wasn't just tapping. He was speaking, without a word. Each step was a sentence. Each shuffle, a memory. Each stomp, a moment he had swallowed instead of said aloud. He told them about the night he was taken from his mother, about the house with too many kids and not enough food, about the birthdays that passed without cake, about the silence, and then about the shoes, the ones that waited, the ones that reminded him, you're still here, you're still moving, you still make noise. The tempo rose. His feet danced like rain over pavement, fast, furious, honest. Every strike was deliberate, every pause was power. He didn't miss a step. But even if he had, no one would have noticed. They weren't watching for mistakes anymore. They were watching for meaning, and when it ended, when he landed the final step with a slide and a soft heel click, he didn't bow, didn't smile, didn't speak, he simply stood, breathing, in a gym full of people who had nothing left to say. At first, no one moved, not a breath, not a cough, not even the glow of a phone screen shifting to another app. The room felt like it had swallowed itself. And Liam, he just stood there, still in the same spotlight, shoes quiet now, chest rising, and falling like waves settling after a storm. He didn't look proud, didn't look afraid either, he just looked free. Then came the sound. Not applause, not yet. Just the scrape of one chair leg against the gym floor. Then another, then the shuffle of someone standing. And then another. Not everyone stood at once. That would have been too clean, too cinematic. No, this was messier, more human. One by one, people rose. Some slowly, unsure. Some all at once, like something inside had snapped. A teacher clutched her chest. A kid in the front row put down his phone like it suddenly weighed too much. Even Caleb, still holding a smirk, forgot what to do with his hands. And then, the clapping began. It didn't roar, it didn't explode, it built. Like rain, scattered, then steady, then full. By the time the applause filled the room, Liam had already turned toward his backpack. He unlaced his shoes, slipped them off, and packed them away without ceremony. Because for him, the moment had already happened. The rest was just echo. Backstage, he stepped out of the spotlight and into the dark. The noise followed behind him like a distant wave, but he didn't ride it. He didn't need to. A student volunteer tried to stop him. "Wait, you were amazing. You should go back out." But Liam just shook his head. He didn't perform for a curtain call. He performed for the silence that came before it, and the voice that filled it when he finally let himself be heard. As he reached the far edge of the hallway, he heard footsteps behind him. Fast, hard, real. "Liam!" He turned. Miss Andrea stood there. Her coat still wet from the rain, her hair pulled back in a way that meant she'd come straight from work. She was breathless, eyes wide, hands shaking just slightly. She started, then stopped. "I'm sorry I was late." He didn't speak, just smiled, a small one. "Enough." She stepped forward and pulled him into a hug that didn't ask for permission, and whispered into his shoulder. "I heard the last part from the door. I didn't need more. I've never been so proud." He didn't cry, but he let her hold him longer than usual, and for once, he didn't feel like he was breaking a rule just by being there. They had already stepped into the hallway, Liam and Miss Andrea, when the voice came from behind them. "Excuse me, are you Liam?" He turned. A tall man in a charcoal coat stood near the auditorium doors. He didn't look like a teacher, didn't carry a clipboard, didn't have a phone raised, but there was something about him, still certain, like he was always waiting for a moment to arrive and knew when it finally had. Liam nodded, cautious. The man smiled softly, held out a hand. "I'm Mr. Halden. I work with the State Youth Arts Program. I was invited to judge." Liam didn't shake his hand. He just looked up, unsure. Halden let his hand fall gently, No offense taken. What you just did out there. He paused, searching for the right words. Wasn't a performance. Liam waited. It was a story. Behind them, the gym erupted again. Another round of applause for the next act. But it was background now. Everything had gone quiet between the three of them. Miss Andrea stepped slightly forward, protective. Halden continued. We run a state program for young dancers and performers, especially those who don't have access to private studios or coaching. We provide training, scholarships, mentors. He looked directly at Liam. And stages where your kind of silence can be heard. Liam didn't blink, didn't answer. But something in him leaned forward. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a folded flyer. Not glossy, not dramatic. Just words on paper. A date. A place. An invitation. He handed it to Liam. Liam held it with both hands as if it might break. You don't have to say yes, Halden said. Then he glanced at the boy's shoes. Well, maybe just tap once if you're interested. Liam stared at the floor for a long second, then lifted his foot. Tap clear, confident, unmistakable. Halden smiled and nodded. I thought so. After he left, Miss Andrea turned to Liam. Was that real? Liam looked down at the flyer, then at her, then said the longest sentence he'd spoken in weeks. I think something just started. She smiled, wider this time. Yeah, she said. I think so too. That night, Liam placed the flyer on his wall with tape from a roll that barely stuck. Then he set his shoes beside his bed, not under it, not buried, beside it, ready. And when he closed his eyes, he could still hear the last echo of that final step, still ringing, still rising, like a voice that had finally found its way out. It had always been unspoken, the way Liam kept a bag packed under the bed, the way Miss Andrea never asked about his past, the way they existed in the same space, not like family, not quite like strangers, but something quiet in between. She was careful, not in the way that meant distance, in the way that meant respect. No sudden hugs, no forced questions, no sentences that started with, you should. She gave him room, and Liam never asked for more. Until now, the night after the talent show, they sat in the living room with the TV off, not talking, just breathing in the same space. Miss Andrea sipped tea from a chipped mug with daisies on it. Liam stared at the flyer on the coffee table. Do you think they really meant it? He asked. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. The man. He nodded. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned forward, picked up the flyer, ran her thumb across the words like she was checking if they'd smudge. Then she said, I think some people are born waiting for something to hear them, and others are born to make them listen. She handed the flyer back to him. You made them listen. There was a pause, not the awkward kind, the kind where something new enters a room. Then Liam spoke again. You came late. It wasn't an accusation, just a truth. Miss Andrea blinked, then exhaled, long and slow. I did. She placed the mug down, her voice steady. I wanted to be there at 5, but a patient flatlined during shift change. I couldn't leave until we brought her back. She looked at him, not hiding the tired in her eyes. I ran 3 red lights. Another pause. I was afraid I missed it. Liam looked down at his hands. You missed the start, he said, but not the end. She nodded. Then carefully she asked, what did I miss in the middle? He didn't answer with words. He stood, walked to the hallway, and brought back the tap shoes. He set them on the floor between them, then stepped in. Right foot, left, a shuffle, a pause. Then the beat. No music, no warm-up, just memory, just truth. His feet moved slow, gentle, not for a crowd this time, just for her. When he finished, he looked up. Miss Andrea didn't clap. She didn't need to. Her eyes shimmered just enough. And her voice, when she spoke, was thick with something deeper than praise. Thank you, she whispered, then added, more to herself than to him, you don't need to be mine for me to be proud. Liam sat down again, and for the first time, he felt something settle inside his chest that had always been waiting for a place to land. He wasn't sure what to call it, but it felt a lot like home. The conservatory smelled like polished wood and pressure. The audition wasn't held in a classroom or a gym or anywhere Liam had ever set foot before. It was a real stage, velvet curtains, tiered seating, a baby grand piano in the wings, and spotlights so precise they made the floorboards feel like glass. He had never seen anything like it, and for a moment, he didn't want to touch anything, didn't want to move too loudly, afraid it would all vanish if he made a sound. Backstage, other kids waited. Some stretched, some hummed, some practiced steps so sharp they looked like they'd been choreographed for years. They wore jazz shoes and tights, hair pulled back with precision, and postures that said, "I've been here before." Liam stood in a shadowed corner. Denim jacket, scuffed tap shoes, a backpack instead of a duffel. He looked like a page someone accidentally slipped into the wrong book. "Number 34, a voice called from the side of the curtain. Liam stepped forward. The woman holding the clipboard didn't smile. She simply nodded and gestured toward the light. "You'll have 2 minutes. 2 minutes to prove something to someone, to himself." He walked toward the curtain, stopped just before the opening, and waited. There were voices on the other side, judges, paper shuffling, a chair being dragged across the stage. He looked down at his shoes. They had dirt on the soles from walking across gravel. One of the laces was frayed. They didn't look like they belonged here. Neither did he. And just when the doubt curled around his throat, he heard it. A whisper, not out loud, but from somewhere inside. "You're not here because they expect you. You're here because you arrived anyway." He exhaled, stepped through the curtain, and into the light. They gave him a badge, not fancy. Just a paper name tag tucked into a plastic sleeve. Liam Walker, Tap Track. Independent applicant. The others had lanyards printed with glossy colors, logos, nicknames. Some wore school jackets from cities he'd never been to. Some had matching team duffels. One girl wore her medals like they were jewelry. Liam had a second-hand backpack and the shoes in his hands. He didn't know where to go, didn't know who to follow. So he waited by the wall until someone noticed. Eventually, a volunteer with a walkie-talkie pointed him toward Studio 3B. "Down the hall, left of the vending machines," she said, not looking up. Inside the studio, mirrors lined the walls. There were 20 kids already warming up, stretches, jumps, rhythmic drills. Liam stepped in quietly and found the farthest corner of the room. He didn't try to catch up, he just watched. The instructor entered, tall, lean, wearing a headset mic like a Broadway conductor. Her eyes scanned the room once and locked briefly on him. Then she clapped her hands. "All right, dancers," from the top. 8 counts, syncopated left, triple on the right. You know this. Everyone moved like a unit, except Liam. He didn't know this. Not the counts, not the terms, not the music. He tried to follow, tried to mimic. But the timing slipped, through his feet like water. The instructor paused after the first run-through, didn't call him out, didn't scold, just said, "If you're behind, find the rhythm inside the mistake, then catch it." Liam nodded, even if he didn't fully understand. After class, no one spoke to him. They packed up in small circles, laughing, shared languages of inside jokes and choreo corrections. He wiped his forehead with his sleeve and sat on the floor alone, unlacing his shoes. Then, a voice. Soft. Curious. "Are you the kid from the gym video?" He looked up. A boy stood there. Skin like copper, hair shaved short, arms full of stickers on his water bottle. "I saw it online. The rhythm was weird. Good weird. Like, different on purpose." Liam shrugged. "Wasn't on purpose." The boy grinned. Still worked, and just like that, someone sat beside him. Not long, not close, but enough. Later that night, back in the shared dorm room, Liam pulled out a notebook. Blank pages stared back at him. He didn't know what to write. didn't know the terms, the bars, the language of choreography. So he drew shoes, foot, shapes, arrows, pauses, and in the margins tiny words: slide, hold, exhale, listen. He wasn't trying to master the room. He was trying to remember that he had already earned the space he stood in. It didn't happen all at once. No big collapse, no dramatic exit. Just a slow unraveling, like a string coming loose from a stitch he didn't know was holding everything together. Week 2 started with a combination drill, simple for most. 6 counts, double shuffle, cramp roll, jump back, pause. But Liam's timing slipped, half a beat off, then a whole. The instructor noticed, didn't scold, just nodded and said, "Let's run it again, all together." But the faces turned, not unkind. Just curious, puzzled, like they couldn't figure out how he'd gotten here. Later that day, in the hallway outside Studio 4A, Liam passed 2 other students talking. He wasn't meant to hear them. But that's the thing about kids like Liam, they always do. That's the one from YouTube, right? Yeah, the silent shoes guy. I mean, it's a cute story, but he's not really polished. The words didn't hit like knives. They landed like dust. Quiet, soft, but heavy. Enough to stick. By the 3rd week, Liam was rehearsing late, after the others left. After the lights were dimmed and the custodians pushed mops down the hallways. He practiced in socks, so he could hear the rhythm in the bones of his feet before he trusted the shoes again. But the more he practiced, the more the beats blurred. His mind flooded with voices. You're just a story. Emotion isn't enough. You don't belong here. One night he left the studio early, shoes slung over his shoulder. He walked the long hallway back to the dorms and sat at the edge of his bed, the notebook open on his lap. And for the first time since arriving, he thought about quitting. Not out of failure, out of silence. The kind of silence that doesn't protect, that doesn't heal. The kind that says, they were right. He didn't pack, but he folded the flyer from the audition and tucked it back into his bag. Just in case. Just in case this had only ever been a borrowed dream. Just in case he needed to wake up. But before he turned off the light, his eyes landed on the corner of the page in his notebook. A small word he had scribbled weeks ago. Hold. He stared at it and whispered into the dark, "Okay." He wasn't looking for it. Not really. He was just wandering, half avoiding rehearsal, half avoiding himself. The basement hallway of the conservatory was cold, lined with storage closets and old vending machines that didn't take cards, fluorescent. Lights flickered overhead like they were tired of shining. Then, a door, metal, unlabeled, slightly ajar. He pushed it open. It was small, square, dusty, smelled like chalk and old floor wax. There was no mirror, no speakers, no mats. No lights except for the one dim bulb overhead. But the floor, wood, raw, uneven, real. It creaked when he stepped in, the kind of creak that listened back. He didn't plan to stay. He didn't plan anything, but he closed the door and took out the shoes, no warm-up, no counts, just his feet. Right, left, heel drop. Pause. A rhythm that wasn't practiced, but remembered. Not from school, not from class, from home, from when the silence in the apartment was too heavy, and the only way to breathe was to move through it. He danced, not fast, not loud, but honest. The room didn't demand form, didn't care about technique. It accepted noise, mistakes, breaths between steps. He stumbled, laughed, tried again, not to perfect, to release. Outside, footsteps passed by the hallway. Laughter drifted from somewhere upstairs. But inside that room, there was only him and the sound of a truth he didn't have to explain. And what he didn't know, what he couldn't see, was that through a thin sliver of the door, someone had paused. Shadow. A figure. Watching, not spying, not judging, just listening. Later that night, Liam returned to his notebook. He drew a box, then wrote 2 words inside. My space. And underneath that, play first, worry later. He didn't know what would come next. But for the first time in weeks, he wasn't afraid of it, because he wasn't dancing to catch up anymore. He was dancing to remember. The announcement came taped to the bulletin board outside Studio AA. Simple list, final showcase lineup, solo performers, closing act, Emily Zhao, modern ballet, Tyler Green, jazz combo, Liam Walker, tap solo, his name. Last again. He stared at it longer than he meant to, not because he was proud, not because he was excited, but because for the first time, he wasn't sure if he wanted it. Because this wasn't just a school gym. This was the big hall, an auditorium with velvet curtains and tiered seating and rows of strangers with folded arms. There would be donors, judges, board members, people who remembered numbers, not moments, people who could decide things. He thought about backing out, really thought about it, even walked down to the admin office and stood in the doorway. But before he could speak, he heard a voice behind him. Don't. He turned. Mr. Halden, the man from the talent show, the man who had first handed him the flyer. Halden stepped forward. You're here because of what you did when no one expected it. Now they expect it. That doesn't mean it has to change. Liam swallowed, but I'm not like them. Halden didn't flinch. No, you're not. Then he smiled. And that's the point. The night of the showcase arrived like thunder before rain. Students dressed in silence. Costumes, makeup, nerves, some paced, some stretched. Liam sat in the dressing room with his shoes in his lap, not tapping, not bouncing, just listening. Inside him, two rhythms fought: perform the way they want or perform the way you need. He stood, tied the laces, one knot, then two. He didn't look in the mirror. He already knew what he looked like. He needed to remember what he sounded like. Backstage, the program moved like clockwork, each act polished, precise, perfect. Then, his name. No introduction, just a pause. Then Liam Walker. He stepped onto the stage, spotlight, silence, eyes, all of them waiting. Phones raised. Judges ready? He walked to center stage, carrying nothing but his shoes and the storm in his chest. And then, he danced. Not the routine from class. Not the one choreographed in clean counts. This was different. It was the beat from the room. No one used. The rhythm from the hallway. The echo of footsteps behind bathroom doors, under dinner tables, inside goodbyes. Each step a word. Each pause a confession. He tapped stories he never had language for. The sound of being moved from house to house. The sound of watching birthday candles melt without lighting them. The sound of someone finally listening. He didn't perform for their applause. He danced to hear himself, and when it ended, he didn't pose. He didn't bow. He just stood there, breathing. Because this time, he didn't need the room to clap to know that they heard him. The lights dimmed. The applause came. And yet, Liam didn't really hear it, not fully. He stood in the dark wings of the stage, heart still tapping against his ribs, as if the rhythm hadn't stopped with the last step. As if the music had never been in the shoes, but in him, people approached. Soft voices, wide eyes, claps on the back. You killed it. I felt that. I didn't even like tap until now. He nodded, thanked them, but something in him remained still. Some part of him was waiting, not for praise, not for offers, for silence, the kind that doesn't ignore you, the kind that holds you. He found it in the hallway. Miss Andrea waited by the exit door, wearing the same black sneakers, her hands tucked into her jacket. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at him and smiled. He walked toward her slowly, still not used to moments like this, still not sure how to carry joy. But when he got close enough, she stepped forward and placed both hands on his shoulders. You didn't just perform, she whispered. You testified. Liam didn't reply, but his eyes shimmered. Back in the dressing room, he changed slowly, folded his clothes neatly, untied his shoes with care, ran his fingers along the soles, not like a goodbye, like gratitude. Outside, the night air was cool. Students streamed out, buzzing with energy, sharing videos, tagging clips, laughing, hugging, making plans. Liam stood by the steps watching them all. Then a girl from the program approached. The same one who had barely looked at him 2 weeks ago. She didn't say anything right away. Just reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Choreography notes. Your footwork," she said. "It broke the rule book, but it worked." She smiled. "Want to collaborate sometime?" Liam blinked, then nodded. "Sure." That night in his notebook, he didn't draw steps. He wrote one sentence. "I don't need to be louder. I just need to be honest." It didn't go viral. Not in the way people usually mean. No millions of views overnight, no brand deals, no dramatic headlines, just a clip. 2 minutes. Shaky phone footage from the balcony, titled, "Quiet Kid Ends Talent Show with This," and that was enough. People watched. Not because it was flashy, because it felt like something, like truth, like memory, like movement that didn't ask permission. The comments came slow. At first, just classmates. I was there, the room went still. I didn't know tap could make me cry. Then strangers. "I showed this to my daughter. She wants to dance." Again. He reminded me of my son, never talks but always listens. "I didn't know you could say that much without a word." Liam read them all, quietly, late at night. With the phone dimmed low, he didn't reply. He just let the echo settle, like he had been waiting for it all along. Miss Andrea printed one out, taped it to the fridge. It said, "He doesn't just dance. He remembers things for all of us." Silent notes. Liam smiled when he saw it, didn't say anything, but left a tap of his shoe on the kitchen tile before walking out the door. The studio gave him a slot, monthly, unpaid, unfiltered, a space for kids who didn't have mirrors or dance, shoes or even words. He taught them to listen to floors, to feel rhythm in socks, to mess up loudly. He told them, "It doesn't have to look right, it just has to feel real." They believed him, because when he said it, he never raised his voice. Years passed. He never became famous, but he became something rarer, a name whispered when someone finally stood up, a rhythm remembered when someone had no way to speak. People didn't come to hear perfect steps. They came to feel something they thought was gone. And sometimes, when he stepped onto a new stage, one far from home, far from the cafeteria where they once laughed, he tapped twice before beginning. Once for the boy he was, once for the silence that waited. Then he danced, and the world stopped. Not to watch, but to listen. If this story stayed with you, even just for a moment, please consider sharing it with someone who needs to be reminded. You don't have to be loud to be heard. And if you believe in quiet strength, in stories that unfold slowly and speak straight to the heart, we'd love for you to stay. Subscribe to the channel, not for numbers, but for more moments that matter.